Okay. Call the meeting to order. This is the Corte Madera Town Council and Sanitary District Number 2 Board for Monday, June 6, 2016. I think we call the meeting, I think we do roll call and then I report out, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, let's do
Pledge
that.
allegiance to.
Could you call roll?
Councilmember Andrews.
Here.
Councilmember Condon.
Here.
Councilmember Lappert.
Here.
Vice Mayor First.
Here.
Mayor Bailey.
Here. Would you join me in the salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I think now I will report out. Oh, we need to rejigger the agenda a little bit. So we had sort of a typographical error on the way that the agenda was published, such that it had the town manager and council reports coming as item number 3, and the open time coming as number 4 for the public, when in fact those ought to have been reversed, so that open time for public discussion goes before the town manager and council reports. Can I have a motion to make that agenda switch?
So moved. Second?
Councilmember Andrews.
Yes.
Councilmember Condon.
Yes.
Councilmember Lappert.
Yes.
Vice Mayor First.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so I do have to report out our closed session. At closed session, we had a couple of different items that we discussed. One of them, I don't have anything to report on, and that is there is a litigation matter that we discussed that I don't have any, there's no action taken. On the other matter that we discussed, which is the public employee appointment, I do have an announcement. We have a tentative agreement to appoint Todd Cusimano as our town manager, subject to a final approval of his employment agreement at a future council meeting. That's it. Okay. Now, we don't have any presentation this evening. We do have open time for public discussion moving along on the agenda. So these are for items that are not already on this agenda. Speakers, please limit themselves to 3 minutes, and you can say whatever you like. So please step up to the microphone if you have something you'd like to add for open time. All right, seeing none, I'm closing open time for public discussion, and I'm bringing it back to the council for town manager and council reports. David, and our town manager, do you have a...
Yes, quickly. As I mentioned in an email to you, we had no request for a garbage rate increase this year, which typically we have on the agenda in June for the beginning of the fiscal year. I think there was one other time that in the last 10 years that there wasn't a rate increase. And then I just wanted to mention future agenda items outside of our next meeting that you have on this agenda. But these have come up in the past, and to let you know what we're thinking about as far as getting them on an agenda, we've talked about changing the election year, and we expect to have a town council discussion at the July 19th meeting on that. The Airbnb issue that you've heard about, we expect to have town council discussion at the August 1st meeting. Junior second units, which would first be vetted by the Planning Commission, and we expect to have the Planning Commission talk about that on September 13th. That's a little bit out there. We've had a request to relook at our filming ordinance, and we expect to have that on Parks and Rec agenda August 22nd and back to the Town Council on September 6th. A lot of talk about encroachment permits here, there, and everywhere, especially up on the railroad right-of-way here, to be vetted by the Planning Commission, and that would be heard by the Planning Commission on June 28th, and I'll be staffing that meeting. So I'm not exactly sure when that will, the results of that when it come back to the council, but we'll get to that. And then a long-term financial plan update on July 19th.
David, I really appreciate that sequence. Thank you for letting us know, because those are all items that each or all of us have asked about, and
Yep.
Thank you for including that.
Okay, you bet. And that's all I have.
Okay. Where would you like to start? Jim, anything?
No, there was an ABAG, MPC open house meeting where they discussed the plan Bay Area 2040, I think is the name. It's moving forward. There's 3 scenarios. The one thing I would say is they are projecting a significant increase in population in the entire Bay Area, which means it's likely that they will allocate a fair amount to Marin relative to what we're used to receiving, but don't know. Diane was there. Did you have a different take on it?
Well, they did pass out the proposed scenarios. Do you remember with Plan Bay Area 1, there was the 3 different scenarios? So it's a similar thing. They named them differently, but it relates to how dispersed the housing will likely be under these different planning scenarios. Corte Madera's numbers weren't horrendous. I mean, they weren't as bad as 2007 to 2014 numbers. We'll need to take a look at them. I would like to see what the underlying assumptions were that make that up. ABAG has never been willing to be transparent about that. So once and for all, I'd like to get that information. The good news is it does not feed into the calculations for RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, which is the housing quota. We just got our RHNA, a year and a half ago or whatever. So we're set for 8 years, and Plan Bay Area is going to be updated every 4 years. So really, we're going through all of this rigmarole for something that doesn't affect housing numbers. Now, Plan Bay Area will affect transportation, and they look at how housing is being dispersed to help determine some of how they will allocate transportation funds. So, yep.
But also from a planning standpoint, whatever they produce in this current cycle will be sort of the foundation they use for the next cycle when the RHNA numbers come.
Likely, so we definitely do need to pay attention, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Carla?
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, I attended a LAFCO session discussing legislations that are that in some way deal with LAFCO, and one is really a very important one, and it's something that has come up on one of the items we'll be discussing later this evening, and that is Senate Bill 1266 that was introduced by Mike McGuire on the request of our Marin LAFCO. And what that is essentially asking that every JPA in a county register with LAFCO. Right now, there are so many different JPAs throughout the county, and no one has a list, a complete list of any of them, even in the county offices. There is no list. And so what happens is, number one, people don't know that they exist. Also, it can sometimes impact accountability. So at any rate, we asked Senator McGuire to carry this legislation, and he has. It would be really just something ministerial, not that it's an oversight program, but just so that there is a list that people can refer to. And I think it will really be very helpful. So far in going through Sacramento, it's been very well received. So I'm hoping soon we will see that that's enacted. Then the other thing that I want to announce is this weekend is Weekend 100. It's our centennial weekend, and it starts Friday evening. I regret to say that I understand it's a sellout already, but there will be games and trivia and dinner served at the community center. Saturday is the big day, starting at 10 in the morning. There are going to be games for everybody, old-time games. There's going to be yoga in the park. There's going to be a bike ride around town. There is going to be a hot dog lunch served. And there is going to be also one of those cherry picker things that there will be a photographer on the top. And at some point in the afternoon, everybody there will congregate together in the park, and there'll be an aerial photograph of the Corte Madera community. And there, the Hall Middle School band and chorus are going to perform. The town band is going to perform. There is going to be a ceremony with proclamations and dignitaries. Senator McGuire will be present to make a little talk. And later in the afternoon, there will be cake to serve 500. So make sure you're there early so you get a piece. And then everybody has a little rest for a couple of hours. And at 7 o'clock, you return to the village parking lot. And there will be live music, the band Jimmy Z and the Great Times Band. And they're going to be playing. And then around 9:17 or 9:18 will be the fireworks display. And it will be spectacular to finish off Saturday evening. But it's not all over there. Sunday, there is going to be a chili cook-off. And I understand that there are a lot of entrants, including our esteemed town clerk. And so anyway, it will be judged by Mayor Bailey and also by Tyler Florence. So anyway, that will be a lot of fun. And then that's followed by Fire versus Police softball game. And that's going to really be a hot one. So, and in between innings, there will be other activities going on. It's going to be a great celebration for the 100th birthday. So I urge you all to come. And it's going to really be fun. And according to the weather, we're going to have a perfect day for it. So anyway, please participate in our Weekend 100.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Michael?
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Diane?
Of course I have a report. I attended the Transportation Authority of Marin. I simply wanted to share that TAM, due to some requirements, regional and state requirements, TAM is developing a new travel model. The travel model is a computer model that helps track and forecast how traffic moves in our community. This travel model will include cyclists and pedestrian counts, which I think is kind of interesting. It will be available for the town to use at a cost to be determined, which may come in very handy for vehicle miles traveled modeling in future CEQA EIR processes. That is now required under SB 743, which changed the way traffic is analyzed under CEQA. It went from a level of service, which measures delays and backups, to vehicle miles traveled. In other words, it was the state legislature throwing up their hands and saying, we know there's a lot of traffic congestion and we're eliminating your ability to analyze that and fight that under CEQA. So now it's all vehicle miles traveled. I also attended a TAM Safe Routes to School meeting. I just wanted to share that Corte Madera has put forth a project, and we are for OBEG 2 funding under State Safe Routes to Schools. There are 8 applicants. We are just one of 8. Our amount requested is $689,000. It is for a multi-use pathway along Paradise Drive between San Clemente and Seawolf. For those of us that witness that every morning, I know, Carla, you live on the east side as well as I do, kids bicycle up on the sidewalk because there's just simply no room for a bike in the lane. or on the side of the lane. Some people do ride their bikes in the lane, and then the cars are getting over to the left lane. It's really a mess, and we need to do something to make that a lot safer. So this is a great project. Unfortunately, the total amount requested by all the applicants is almost $3 million. So, and I don't recall off the top of my head what the total funding available is, but you know, I'll keep my fingers crossed, but there's a lot of competition out there for that funding. I also wanted to share that something I learned at the Safe Routes to School meeting is that other cities have required private schools to create transportation plans as part of an approval process. This has been done during construction or during expansion when they're going through the permitting process. It has helped other communities to be able to encourage and really increase the number of green trips and work to reduce school-related traffic in the communities. So I think it's something for us to keep in the back of our minds as we, you know, continue our multi-pronged approach to deal with traffic in the community. That's all. Thank
Can I ask you one question, Diane?
Sure.
Is the aggregate amount of funding available, I take it less than the 3 million that's?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Like by an order of 10?
Well, you know, all of OBEG 2 is about 2 million, but this is just the Safe Routes to School, so what is it, maybe 400,000 or 500,000, I think? Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Got it.
minimal. But
Thank
if
you.
we don't get funding through this program, we will continue to seek funding through other programs. That's kind of how it works,
Thank you.
begging for dollars.
Okay, I have a very brief report. We've been receiving, in honor of our town's 100th anniversary, the occasional proclamation or commendation from a variety of significant types, and we got one just recently, very thankfully, from Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom. I won't read the whole thing, although we might at the ceremony this next weekend, but I would like to read you the 2 last sentences that we have from our Lieutenant Governor to the town. And it reads as follows, underneath Town of Corte Madera. Whereas, during their 100 years as an incorporated town, Corte Madera has served as an example of excellence for the state of California. And now, therefore, I, Gavin Newsom, yada, 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 do hereby congratulate the town of Corte Madera on their centennial celebration of 2016. It's very nice, don't you think? So I'm grateful to the Lieutenant Governor for seeing the light of our fair city. And that's the only report I have for now. Okay, there was one manager report. We commonly hear from Adam Wolf, our Director of Planning, about the Tomo Vista East Quarter study. Does he have anything to say? Adam?
Just real quickly, working to get the draft report out tomorrow. In fact, notices went out on Friday that we are going to be discussing the draft report for the Tamil Vista corridor, and its the recommendations that we're coming out with will be done at the Planning Commission next Tuesday, June 14th, and then we're expecting bringing that to the council in July for discussion with you as well. So tomorrow it should be out. I will work on that.
And Adam, what just generally, what's the sequence by which we conclude the process?
Well, the acceptance of the report would conclude the study portion of the process, and then there would be implementation of some of its recommendations, and we're working on that. That would happen subsequent to that, but also working in parallel on some of those concepts now.
But I mean, at some point, don't we consider whether there are rules and regulations to
Yes.
apply?
Yeah, so the subsequent to the report, there would be implementation of ordinance amendments. That would happen basically August, September.
And the amendments to the ordinance is the moment at which we will have,
New regulations.
I see. Okay, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Can I ask a question? It's related to the
Sure.
analysis study. The Army Corps of Engineers published notification that they've got a permit application to fill in the pond at the hotel. What has been the town's involvement with that? Have we been involved in that permitting process at all?
No, it's between the applicant and the Army Corps.
No town involvement at all?
No.
Could I add, Jim, we can comment on that, and I do plan on reviewing it and commenting on it.
Thank you, Adam. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, the purpose of which is to group items together that are routine or have been discussed previously and don't require further discussion. They can be approved by a single motion, although if anybody would like, we can remove any one or more of the items for a more formalized discussion. Would anybody like to make a motion or to ask any of the items to be removed? Seeing nothing from the public, a motion from the council?
I'll move to approve consent calendar items 5.1 through 5.6.
Second?
Councilmember Andrews.
Yes.
Councilmember Condon.
Yes?
Councilmember Lappert.
Yes.
Vice Mayor First.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes. Great, thank you very much. Now we're on to public hearings. So we have a sanitary district item. Does that mean that we now need to convene a new meeting of some sort? Is that how that works, Randy? If we have a sanitary district item? So I convene a sanitary district board session now? Have I just done so? Do I need to do anything else to formally consider the that's it? Okay. All right, so the first item, 6, Roman numeral 1, little I, consideration and possible action to approve proposed resolution number 01-2016, establishing the sanitary district appropriation limit for 2016-2017. Report from George Warman.
Mr. Mayor and members of the Board of Directors, this is an annual requirement of the GANA initiative. Very briefly, the appropriation limit for the sanitary district would be $10,117,647 in fiscal year 16-17. The reason why the district is required to have an appropriation limit is because it has a property tax levy. If it did not have a property tax levy, this would not be required. It would be simply funded by the sewer service charge and by other service charges, federal and state grants. One reason why the sewer service charge has remained fixed for the last several years is because the increase in the assessed valuation, which raises up the property taxes. And Council Member First indicated that the Central Marin Sanitation Agency has a projection that their costs will be going up to their member agencies. I think it was in the 3 to 5 year period they estimated. It's entirely possible that because of increases in the AV that may not require an increase in our sewer service charge. So that is, again, to repeat, the reason why we have not had to raise the sewer service charge over the past several years, since it was raised up to $500 a sewer user unit, which is in effect one residential unit. That's been the primary reason.
George, I'm sorry to interrupt. You said the increase in the AV?
Assessed valuation, which
Sorry.
drives the
Got it.
property tax
Got it.
take. The estimated proceeds of taxes for the sanitary district this coming year is a little over $3 million, and that means that the appropriation limit is about over $7 million below the limit. So the effect is that the GAN limit has no fiscal impact on the district this coming year, nor does it appear that it will ever have an impact on it for the foreseeable future. So the recommendation would be to adopt resolution number 01-216, setting the appropriation limit for the sanitary district at $10,117,647 for fiscal year 16-17.
Thank you, George. Are there clarification questions for George before we open it to the public? All right, seeing none, would anybody from the public like to address this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council, and would anybody like to discuss it or make a motion?
Move to approve Resolution 01-2016, establishing the appropriation limit.
Second. Oh, somebody second, sorry.
Okay, let's get this right. Director Andrews.
Yes.
Director Condon.
Yes.
Director Lappert.
Yes.
Vice President First.
Yes.
President Bailey.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I think that concludes our sanitary district item. We need to reconvene we're gonna have to open up the sanitary board here in a minute for a business item, but that concludes the public hearing item. Now we resume town business. Do I need to say anything more formal, Mr. Attorney, or can we simply just say that? Okay, moving on to public hearing item 6, Roman numeral 2, little I, consideration and possible action to approve proposed resolution number 18/2016, establishing the town appropriation limit for 2016-2017. Report from George Warman.
Again, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, this sets the appropriation limit for the town, which would be about $15,550,000. Now, again, that only applies to the general unrestricted proceeds of taxes. That's not our budget. That number. The appropriation limit would be $34,540,628. The available unrestricted general purpose tax revenue is $15,550,000. That number is about $18,991,000 below the allowable limit. That includes the sales tax override, which is about $2,006,000. So you can see that the GAN limit also has no fiscal impact on the town in fiscal years 16-17, nor does it appear that it will for the foreseeable future. Just as a matter of information, every year in the report that's filed for the State Controller's Office, I have to do a reconciliation that comes up with the actual proceeds of taxes at the end of each year. And for the last 15 or 20 years, we've been way, way, way below the limit. The last time that we were over the limit was in the very early 1990s. So if there's any questions, I'll attempt to answer them. The action would be to adopt a resolution 18-216, which would set the 2016-17 appropriation limit for the town of Corte Madera at $13,540,628.
Thank you, George. Are there any clarification questions for George from the council? All right, seeing none, I'll open it up to the public. Would any member of the public like to address this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment, bring it back to the council for discussion or motion.
Move to approve Resolution 18/2016, establishing the appropriation limit.
Councilmember Andrews? Yes. Councilmember Condon?
Yes.
Councilmember Lappert?
Yes.
Vice Mayor First?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, George.
Thanks.
Okay, now we're the second town item under public hearings. This is 6, Roman numeral 2, little I. Consideration and possible action to introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 16.10 of the Municipal Code relating to flood damage prevention. Report from Kelly Crow. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Mayor Bailey, council members, the change that we propose tonight is to Chapter 16 of the Municipal Code, flood damage prevention. Just a little background on the reason for the code and why we have it is the town is a participant of the National Flood Insurance Program. And with that, there are certain requirements that we have. So we had to adopt an ordinance, enforce an ordinance, and maintain an ordinance. And maintaining the ordinance is the key reason why we're here tonight to update the code. One of the key reasons for the change to the code is derived from the FEMA flood insurance rate maps that became effective on March 16th of this year. One of the key pieces of information on the map is the base flood elevation. Now, per the new FEMA maps, the base flood elevation increased by 1 foot, and as a result, the elevation that we show in the code is inconsistent with that elevation. So we need to update it and maintain our ordinance. Currently, as a practice, when we take in projects downstairs, we are enforcing the current base flood elevation of 10. This effort is really to update it and make us consistent with federal law and participating in the NFIP. So I ask that the changes be adopted, and we be consistent with the FEMA flood insurance rate maps and the federal law in participating with the National Flood Insurance Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Hang on. Are there any clarification questions from the council for Kelly?
I have one. On, in the proposed ordinance, the changes included adding something about all new construction or substantial improvements. Should we define substantial improvements, or is it defined elsewhere?
It is defined in the code. So a substantial improvement would be an improvement that is greater than 50% of the market value of the structure.
Okay, I was looking on page 12, so I'm sorry, is that on 7? Okay,
I don't know the exact location of it, but I could track it down for you.
Sub
got
AAA.
it, okay, sorry. It
No,
was
it's a good-
5 pages earlier, and I didn't quite catch that, thank you.
It's a healthy code.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Jim, any other questions? Okay. Anybody from the public would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Is there any discussion about the municipal code amendment? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve municipal code chapter
Introduce.
1610, flood damage prevention, introduction of an ordinance to amend chapter 16.10 of the municipal code.
Second?
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember Condon?
Yes?
Councilmember Lapper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor First?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes. Thank you, Kelly. Nice work.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now going to reconvene as our first business item, the Sanitary District Board again. Having now been convened, we'll handle item 7, Roman numeral 1, little I, to approve, possible action to approve response from Sanitary District Number 2 to the Marin County Civil Grand Jury for the report entitled 2015-2016 Web Transparency, report from Rebecca Vaughn. Rebecca.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey and council. I am very pleased to give a glowing review of the grand jury's report in this case, and not just because they awarded us an A+ on our sanitary
No, the Sanitary
No,
District.
The sanitary district. Never mind, I'm ahead of myself. All right, they brought us up to a B-. Anyway,
That's still excellent work.
that's still yet to come. The A+ will be discussed later. But without their guidance, I wouldn't have known where to start to bring our website up to a point which is easily navigable by the general public.
Don't give them any credit. What are you doing?
It was an excellent report, and
Rebecca, what action do we need to take?
we need to approve the response.
Okay.
And in order to approve the response, there's a form that they require that you fill out saying that you agree with or disagree with or agree in part with the recommendations made in the report. So what I did was go through their best practices list. I made what I thought was a complete recommendation. They disagreed on several parts, and I asked for an early grading of our website, and so I would have some time to make other adjustments as needed. So I found out early that we received a B-, which was one of the requirements of the report, was to bring your grade up to or exceed a B- level. So if I do nothing else, we are already there, but I do have several improvements in the works that I'm getting input from others, and they should be enacted by July 1st, at which case I think they would regrade us if I submit another self-audit form. So therefore, I said that we were in agreement with their recommendations, and they have been enacted in part, and that the parts that weren't enacted would be enacted on July 1st.
Thank you, Rebecca.
If
Nice
you-
work.
If you differ with my opinion, we can discuss that.
Are there any clarification questions of Rebecca?
Oh, I just had one comment. First of all, Rebecca, I think you did an outstanding job on it, and regardless of what they say. But I did want to point out that on that findings 4, where even the grand jury reports that the County of Marin does not currently publish a definitive list of all its dependent special districts and JPAs, and that's what I was referring to with Senator McGuire's legislation, that hopefully that will soon be coming down the pipeline. But you did a great job in spite of
Well,
the grade,
thank you.
Rebecca.
With
Thank
respect to
you.
the sanitary district, this was a difficult set of suggestions to enact because the sanitary district, unlike other sanitary districts in the county, does not have a self-standing website. We're a subsidiary district to the town, and the sanitary district exists on our website as a page within our website. So a lot of what they requested was duplicating efforts, so I had to recreate a lot of pages and just change names from town to district and from council member to board member. But I did what they asked, and it was well received.
Thank you. Any other clarification questions? Okay, I'll open it to the public. Would any member of the public like to speak to this item? Please, Mr. Warman.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Rebecca is dealing with a problem that the county of Marin and their bodies simply refuse to recognize that Sanitary District Number 2 is the only subsidiary district in the county of Marin. It is not a self-standing special district. They are treating it as a self-standing special district, and there really isn't a whole lot that Rebecca can do about that. And I'm not certain of this, how many subsidiary districts there are remaining in the state of California. When Proposition 13 passed, there were 75, and we were one of them, and almost every one of them was in Los Angeles County. There was one in San Mateo County, which has since been dissolved. It was the Belmont Fire District. It's been a frustration to me over the years, to David, in dealing with LAFCO and everyone else in the county, that pursuant to the Municipal Reorganization Act, which Rebecca has cited as the authority for Sanitary District Number 2, again, the grand jury simply refuses to recognize that fact, and that's all I wanted to mention. And she's done an excellent job on trying to satisfy their requirements.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that perspective. Okay. Since there's no further public comment, I'll bring it back to the council. Is there any discussion, or would somebody like to make a motion?
Just one quick question.
Yeah, of course.
You know, that sanitary district too has always been sort of this ripe plum that people have been looking at to pick from us and take from us and merge with lesser. And I just want to make sure that we're not giving up our ownership and oversight of that. I know the distinction is all just by title and all the rest of it, but you know, I just want to make sure that we're not actually, by doing this, and they're forcing more of a separation of that from us, and so therefore be able to circumvent our authority and all the rest of it.
Can I respond to Michael on that?
Of course.
In response to your comment, that is indeed true. There are other neighboring cities that would love to merge with us, and particularly one city that has really been pushing it ever since I've been on LAFCO, to do that and then use our funds as an
Exactly.
emergency fund to upgrade their system that hasn't been attended to in over 40 years, and that would then cause eventual degradation of our sanitary district, and loaning their coffers. So I've been fighting for that.
So through the mayor, if I
Continuously.
may ask you, if I would think it should be worth talking about completely obliterating that Sanitary District 2 website and keeping it as a page on our website. It is our district.
I don't think isn't that what we're doing?
Yes. I
But-
did ask our
Yeah.
IT manager to create a domain name.
But even
What is
that,
it? Is
even
it-
that I have a problem.
But it-
with.
cmsanitarydistrict.org. It's just a name. It takes the name takes you to that page on our website. It was to give it an identity. Maybe it's not necessary, but it seemed like that went
Is
to
it
try
more
and reach the.
prominent in, say, the planning department page on our website or
No.
any of the other
No, I can show you right.
departments of the town?
If you look right here, it's just government departments, sanitary district number 2. It's a page on our
Okay,
website.
right.
Actually, there's nowhere that mentions cmsanitarydistrict.org except that I provided it to the grand jury in my self-audit form.
See,
And it
right
directed
there-
to that page.
Right there is cites the Municipal Reorganization Act as the authority. Right there, right on the introduction to the district.
How,
I would love to find out more about the difference between a subsidiary district and a JPA. I mean, the JPA, as far as I'm concerned, is a whole separate agency. So I'm curious about a subsidiary district, and that's maybe just for staff, maybe Dave, if you could find that out, or George, maybe just send me the link to any explanation.
Diane, excuse me, LAFCO website.
Oh, great, okay, I will look on the LAFCO website. LAFCO, by the way, stands for Local Area Formation Commission, LAFCO. Then, I actually think it might not be a bad idea to add something in the letter, in the cover letter, maybe a second paragraph.
That's what I was getting to.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I
No,
jumping the
no,
gun
you do
on-
it.
on
You, no,
here?
no.
Okay. Saying that the sanitary district number 2 is a subsidiary district of the town of Corte Madera, and is not a separate agency under, such as the Joint
Right.
Powers
I
Agency.
would go for that.
Right, it is the only special district in Marin,
The only subsidiary.
or subsidiary
Yeah, it's not a
district in
special
Marin, sorry. The only subsidiary district in Marin, and if I'm not mistaken, responsibility for the subsidiary district falls wholly within the purview of the town of Corte Madera, correct?
Correct.
So let's say that right there in paragraph 2, and then you can start out. But regardless of that, we have still implemented the suggestions to improve the website for the sanitary district, as we recognize the differences between a subsidiary district and a JPA might not be something the general public might be aware of, or something like that.
sounds good.
Cool. I'm happy with that.
Should I disengage the special URL for the district, or keep it?
Well, that's the question. Anytime that you put another thing, you're giving a court or somebody reason, well, look, you've even agreed to it. Look, you're 2 separate things, aren't you? You did it there. So I don't give them anything. If you give them an inch, they take a foot. Don't give them anything. This is our, we worked on it, we've paid for it, it's our investment, we own it.
And I'd like to actually refer again to what you said about they take a foot. There's, well, LAFCO right now is looking at the sanitary districts and CMSA as the water treatment plant, and looking at just doing a study of it, but also looking at potential consolidation with Ross Valley Sanitary and San Rafael Sanitary District. I am dealing with that at CMSA. Carla, I'm sure, is dealing with it at LAFCO. Nisha represents the town in the ad hoc committee and I would love to get an update, by the way, about how that's going. It is incredibly important that we ensure that
Bright line. We love it,
our,
bright line.
right, that our interests and really the interests of our ratepayers are protected.
So how do you propose we move forward on this?
Well, I propose that
I
we,
think that addition to that letter.
the addition to the letter.
Okay?
I actually kind of agree with Michael about the alternative URL.
Okay.
Let's,
Unless you could just route it, you click
That's
on
what
that
it does.
URL.
Yeah, that's what it
yeah, but
does.
let's just not.
It'll take us right to the main town page, not the subsidiary, the main town page.
Yeah, I think as a legal principle, the names don't change what something is. And the fact that you put an extra URL, in my view, doesn't make a difference as to
Okay.
whether it actually is or is not. Doesn't matter what you call it, it depends on what it is. And I think the statutory authority is quite clear in that enacting or enabling legislation right there. But I'm sort of indifferent, frankly, guys. I'm happy to somebody else lead on this.
Yeah.
Whatever you like.
It's important, because they will,
Okay.
they've been going like this for a long time.
Dan, why don't you make a motion, whatever you think's appropriate?
Okay. Did we already do public, we already did public comment, right?
We have.
Okay. I would move to approve the response from Sanitary District Number 2 to the Marin County Civil Grand Jury regarding Web Transparency Report Card, with the addition of the language that I outlined in the cover letter.
I'll second that.
Okay. Director Andrews.
Agree.
Director Condon.
Yes.
Director Lappert.
Yes.
Vice President First.
Yes.
President Bailey.
Yes. Rebecca, can I ask you one question? Is that
Yes.
going to change our grade? We're good, right? We've got the B- at least.
I think we get an A+ now.
I
Because we're a
don't know.
subsidiary district.
I was just trying to make it
Nice.
look like how they wanted it to look.
No, I'm
So-
good with it either way.
Yeah.
I just
You
was
get
don't
A+
curious.
think-
from me, Rebecca.
I don't know if the addition of the URL helped, but they just they wanted it to be as, anyway, so.
Okay.
Oh, well, perhaps I should have said, and with the change to the URL.
Change to the
Can-
URL.
Well, because didn't you mention the URL in the response?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
Oh, got it, okay.
Can I
Great.
It
just
was
ta-
just on the audit form.
just add one thing? I think that stating that about, our relationship with Santu versus all the other districts, that it will probably be news to them. I think that they aren't even aware of it, probably. And so it'll probably be timely.
Yeah, that's a good reason to do it.
Okay.
Just-
Yeah.
I think we've already made our, go ahead, Jim.
I was gonna ask a question, but I can do it later.
You know, well, maybe I'll take this offline, but I think it might not be a bad idea on the website to add just one sentence about why Santu was incorporated as a subsidiary district to the town of Corte Madera. Simply add something like, this was done to improve efficiency.
I think it's in the
It's in there, yeah.
Okay, is it further down? And I know I'm getting in the weeds here,
Yeah,
but
you know what, why don't we take this part up at some other
All
time,
right.
if that's all right?
Well, I'll take it up with, yeah.
We've made our motion, we'll just move on. It's not that we don't.
Got it.
Let me know before July 1st. That's when I promised I would have
Okay.
the updates done, so we can work on that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on to business item number 7, Roman numeral 2, little I.
Yes, exactly.
Refinance of 30-year 2006 Park Madeira Center certificates of participation for the remaining 20 years of certificate bonds, with the maturity remaining as of February 1st, 2037. There are 2 resolutions, 15/2016, and a second one, which is approving a supplemental appropriation. Report from George Warman.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, this is a continuation of an item you considered on May 17th. A primary difference here is that based on your discussions at the last meeting, Mr. Craig Hill, who is with us here in the audience, along with Jones Hall, we have James Warniak from James Hall with us. They incorporated that into the legal documents on the proposed refinance. Mr. Craig Hill has done a memo explaining the make-whole redemption provision, which is attached to my staff report. And if you have any detailed questions on that, which I'm sure you may, Mr. Hill would be the one to answer those questions. The other item that is not included in my staff report, Councilmember First asked a question on the redemption schedule, and Mr. Rob Schmidt, who is a vice president in NHS Advisors, did a redemption schedule based on the assumptions that they feel are valid at this point in time. Rebecca doesn't have that, but we can put it up on the website if you wish to take a look at it. The savings based on the assumptions at this point in the refinance over the remaining 20-year period would be $1,135,000. Now, that is an estimate. We won't exactly know what it is if the council approves the refinance and when it hits the market. And that's why the preliminary official statement does not have the redemption schedule in it, because that won't be known for the final official statement until it hits the market. And if there's any questions, either I or Mr. Hill or Mr. Warniak will attempt to answer them.
Okay, thank you, George. Diane, Jim, or should we open it to clarification questions for now?
I have a clarification.
Okay.
Considering that the appraisal value came in over the outstanding principal owed currently and the amount that we're looking at to refinance, the first thing that came to my mind was, then why do we need the other properties as collateral? You know, the town hall, the fire station. And then the other question came up, and I'm going to give credit to Jim for this, because he brought this to my attention. Why wouldn't we possibly consider creating only, or putting up as collateral only town properties that are used as town properties, so that the bonds could be tax-free and we could get a much favorable rate? So I'm wondering, my question to you is, had you considered both of those options, and what's the thinking behind your recommendation?
Good evening, Craig Hill, NHA Advisors. Good to see you all again. So the first question with regards to the assets that are securing the financing, the way that the credit rating agency, Standard & Poor's, looks at this, because it is a certificate of participation or a lease, there is an appropriation. Every year, the council, as part of their budget process, is appropriating a certain amount to pay debt service. There is no other commitment or hook. It's not a revenue bond. It's not something that's fixed. It truly is an annual obligation. If you think about it as 20 remaining obligations, not one big 20-year obligation. The way the rating agencies look at that is they consider it essential. If you were to get into a financial bind and you were at your time of budget, and the only leased asset was Park Madera Center, there is a higher probability that you would say, well, you know, if we don't really need it this year, can we just not make a payment for a year? What the rating agencies do believe is essential assets, public safety, town hall, they're operational, and the likelihood, not to say that the council would ever not make a debt service payment, but the likelihood of an essential asset not being available is much lower. And so it has a rating impact. I mean, it is certainly, from a structuring perspective, possible that we could just commit the center, because we do have an appraisal that shows that the center has a value in excess of what the financing amount will be. So under state law, I'll play lawyer for a second, we will meet the lease rules, but it also potentially could negatively impact the rating that we would get, which then to a market means a higher interest rate. So that's probably a long way of saying you can do it. Our recommendation is to keep the same asset pool together, because you are getting the benefit of improving the credit with these other essential assets. Okay, and then I think the second question, can you ask that one more time?
And again, I want to credit Jim Andrews for bringing this to my attention, but if we were to create a pool of pool of properties to put up as collateral, so maybe town center, the fire stations, or whatever, that would meet the requirements, essentially meet the 9 million, would we qualify for tax-free bonding, or whatever the right term is? And would that indeed give us a favorable rate And is that something we should consider?
So
Have
that-
we considered?
Yeah,
should
so
we
there's
consider?
two responses, and I'll let
Okay.
James talk to the tax exemption portion. But the first part of the answer is you could certainly pool together any other set of assets. It does not have to be Park Madera Center. We just simply have to come up with a basket of properties that have sufficient value to meet the lease or the rental rules that we have with the state. So, we need to come up with an aggregate of $9 or $10 million, let's say. That does not necessarily get you away from the taxable versus tax exempt nature because of what the original use of the proceeds were in 2006. So the city used it, or I'm sorry, the town used the proceeds to acquire a property that is used for private use. So the IRS doesn't give you the exemption, doesn't give you the benefit of allowing it to be tax exempt. And the only way you would be able to get to tax exempt is really to repurpose the center as you move city employees or lease it to the school district or somebody else.
Got it. Thank you. Can I also ask?
I was just going to go further on that.
okay.
Don't lose
Sure.
your train of thought. So are you saying then that, say, for example, for some miracle, the gas station were to decide it wanted to close, could the town, if there were money or if there were nonprofits that wanted to partner with the town on something like this, could we, or would it be considered then tax exempt to have an intergenerational center or something, that's tied in to our community center that might be for all ages, but something that is a public use type of facility?
Yeah, I think there's two answers to that, and you can speak to the tax, do you have an immediate conversion to tax exemption? From a business perspective, right, we want to look at this holistically from an accounting and a financial. Your revenue stream that you're receiving off of the center is, getting X dollars, which is helping to offset the operations as well as the debt service, the COP that we're talking about here. If you were to convert it to an all public use, what would the revenue stream look like for preschools and perhaps senior programs, and would that rental income, assuming it's something different than what you're getting at the current tenant rates, would that differential be greater or less than the interest savings that you're going to get through a tax exempt rate? So hypothetically, you would go tax exempt, let's say, and it drops the annual debt service $100,000. That's a good thing. That would be offset by lower rents, theoretically. And are those lower rents greater or less than the $100,000 interest savings? So you'd want to look at this holistically to really figure out, is it worth making it a public use facility versus a for-profit operation like it is now? And I don't know, James, if it converts or...
Thank you.
Hi, James Wierzeniak again with Jones Hall. Nice to see you all again. And just to follow up, I agree with what Mr. Hill was saying to Councilmember First's questions regarding it's the use of proceeds that determines whether you're going to have a tax exempt or a taxable financing. And so to your question, Councilmember Condon, you could theoretically in the future, if you began using the space or part of the space for public purposes, you could refund in the future. But if we go ahead with this transaction, it's a taxable transaction. It'll be in the market, sold taxable. You would not be able to instantly convert it upon a conversion of part of the Park Madera Center. You could refund in the future, though.
You could refinance, in other words.
Exactly,
Yeah.
refinance.
Yeah, do a refinance where part of it was still private and part of it was public.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a couple more questions. Are we still assuming an 8-year call? And what are we estimating now for costs? think I missed that.
Okay, so two good questions. The first one is we went and talked to the underwriters and their trading desks, and the nature of this 20-year taxable COP, we do not need to have a fixed non-call period. So this concept of an 8-year call protection or a 10-year call protection does not need to be built into the documents. And the documents that are drafted before you tonight have removed that. In lieu of that, there is what's called a make-whole redemption clause. So the investor agrees that the town could at any time, starting on day one, ask to pay off the debt. And they will allow that to happen. So for the first, let's just say 8 years, because we would ask that it go, that there would be no test after 8 years. You could do it without any penalties or any costs. But in the beginning, the make whole clause is basically a formula whereby an investor, in the event the market goes down, meaning the interest rates go lower than they are today, their reinvestment risk goes up, right? Let's just say they're going to lend you the money at 4% today, and if the market goes to 2%, you give them all their proceeds back, and they're going to not be able to earn 4% anymore. So it would be punitive to them, and they're going to say, I need a formula to pay a premium to allow you to pay me off. Now, if it goes the other way, and let's say the market goes from 4% to 5%, the investor, are happy to get their money back because they know they can turn around tomorrow and invest it at 5%. So the make whole gives you full flexibility to pay off all or a portion of the debt with proceeds of a sale or a refinancing or whatever you want to do. And the only potential cost would be the differential between what the interest rate market is today and the interest rate at the time you actually tell or notify them that you want to pay them off.
Over 8 years.
Over 8 years.
Thank you.
And in our opinion, we feel like we're at historical lows, so the odds of actually owing a premium are hopefully insignificant.
Thank you.
What would the cost have been under the traditional no-call provision
So
if we decided to sell after day one?
Right. So we analyzed when we were before you last month that there was we were talking about this concept of 8 years of no call, and we looked at what would happen at year 3. So let's just say that the council decided at year 3 they wanted to terminate the property or sell the property and then terminate a portion or all of the debt. And that would create a 5-year escrow, right? You're 3 years in, but you had to wait till year 5. So year 8, sorry. So that 5-year escrow would, the effective cost of that on what we were considering, I think $10.5 million was the outstanding principal, was going to be about $200,000, roughly, a little underneath $200,000.
If the decision was made after 3 years?
After 3 years.
Okay.
And that's assuming that we're in today's current reinvestment market where, LAIF is earning nothing effectively. So we were assuming for 5 years you put the money in an account, but you're not really earning anything.
Thank you.
Okay, and then my follow-up question about costs. In the staff report, it says estimate, a high estimate would be 500,000, but then in the report we got from NHA advisors that maybe James did, it
We did
says
it.
Delivery date expense of 377,259.
Correct.
So
So
do we
it- we're-
estimate somewhere between 377?
So 350 to 375 is our working budget right now.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before we open it to the public? Would anybody from the public like to comment on this issue? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Discussion?
Oh, I have a discussion.
Okay.
I did a little analysis. I'm thinking about this, I understand it's a certificates of participation, it's a lease, yada, yada. I look at this as a loan, because it's just a loan. So I put together kind of an amortization schedule for both the existing loan and a refinance loan. And you guys have copies here. So, actually, could we go to page 3 real quick? So, if you've ever looked at your home loan, you consider 30 years, right? And how much you're gonna be paying every month, how much of that's gonna go towards interest, how much is gonna go towards principal, and what that does to your equity, your principal balance. After 30 years, you're down to 0. Unfortunately, when you're starting out with a loan, most of your payment is going towards interest. So I did this for the existing loan, and because it's a whole lot of months, I actually kind of collapsed them. So you can see the month on the left. So this is the first 10 years of our existing loan. So $10,575, I kind of guesstimated the actual rate to get to close to what our monthly, our payment is. So you can see over 10 years, we've made, and these are all, estimates, but they're pretty close to the actual.
$10,575,000.
$10,575,000,
Okay.
what'd I say?
10,000.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, if only. Okay, so over 10 years, we have made $7,698,000 in payments. Almost $6 million of that has gone to interest, with approximately $1.7 million gone to pay down the principal. Okay? And you can look, at what I've done below that. I have the similar calculations over the next 4 years, next 8 years, 20-year totals and 30-year totals. The next page is an amortization schedule under the new loan amount and the new rate. And again, these are kind of ballpark, but I get pretty darn close to what the staff report is saying. So over the next 4 years, if we refinance, we'll be paying $2.8 million in order to pay down about $1.3 million in principal. So $1.5 million would go straight to interest. And then, of course, we do not have that 8-year payback, but, unless, of course, there's interest rates go even lower. I think that's a minimal risk personally, but, anyway. So what I did is I kind of looked at what we've got going on with our existing loan and what we might have with our refinance loan, and I came up with some different scenarios. So back to page 1, if you wouldn't mind, Rebecca. So up at the top is our cost to date. I already went over that. Scenario 1, we do not refinance and we hold the property. Annual cash outlay, about $770,000. And I went over kind of what the next 4-year costs. Over 30 years, in order to pay off the entire loan, the interest we will be paying on that is $12,519,000. Just below that, if we sell now, I can only guesstimate what we would be able to sell it for. I've talked to a few people who know real estate. I don't think we can get 11. Like, let's say we got 9 and we were able to pay off our existing balance. We're still at a loss of $6 million, which we've already spent on interest. Scenario 3, just below that, we do not refinance and sell the property in 4 years. You can see where that puts us. We would need to make, over the next 4 years, another $3 million in payments, which would give us a little more equity. But let's say we are only able to sell it for $9.5 million. Our balance at that point is $7.8, $8 million in interest paid, net gain and loss over $6 million. I mean, we're talking some incredibly huge numbers here. Scenarios 4, 5, and 6 relate to refinancing. Now, if we refinance and hold the property, total interest over 30 years, $10,741,000. That includes the initial 10 years of interest we've already paid plus 20 years of refinance. Scenario number 5 would need to be recalculated a little bit because, of course, now we do not have that 8-year call. So in the interest of efficiency, let's just skip over that one and go to scenario 6. If we refinanced and sold the property in 8 years, over the next 8 years, we would need to make $5.7 million in payments, of which $2.8 million of that is going to go straight to interest. Assuming we can sell the property for $10 million, our bond principal at that point is $6.7 million. Net gain or loss is about 5.5. We're not gaining a whole lot compared to scenario 2, or if we sell it now. I mean, really, the difference is only about $470,000. I put this together as just a thought experiment. I don't think we need to sell the property right this second, but we're talking about some really huge numbers here and really huge interest amounts, and we've let it slide for 10 years because we had that call. I don't think we need to rush into refinancing without considering what we might want to do with the property. Maybe we want to subdivide the parcel and sell part of it. We can rezone before we sell it and zone for precisely what we want to see there. Maybe we could take the back half of the property and rezone that for senior housing. We've got at the front of the property incredibly popular Cafe Verde. We've got a really attractive local serving bank, and we've got a gas station that has a ridiculously long lease. So we could hold on to those. When the gas station lease comes up, close it or whatever, and change the uses for that. We could potentially take the little building behind Cafe Verde and part of the parking lot and keep that for the town. And we could build some flexible space there that Cafe Verde could maybe use if they have special events or something, and the town could use for activities, classes for seniors or teens or whatever. We could create a flexible space there. That's obviously not going to be decided tonight, but I think it's something we need to have a vision to start thinking about and considering. And I would like to do it before we jump into refinancing. And I mean, right off the bat, it's going to cost us $350,000 to $375,000 to refinance. I think Craig had said in his email that, if we decide to sell within a few years, it doesn't make sense to refinance. And I think that's what we should be concentrating on right now is if there is a chance we are going to possibly sell or maybe sell a portion of this, then maybe we hold off on the refinancing and go through a process of starting the conversation about what the future of that site's going to be. I think there's no huge hurry here. Yeah, we could save some money, but in the whole scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what these numbers really are. So that's my say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Michael?
Well, the only thing I would say is that this is really a philosophical issue. I don't believe that in looking at this as some sort of financial scheme or some sort of cost-benefit analysis kind of thing. We have a piece of property which came up and we got a hold of it, and we will never have that opportunity again. And we decided at the time that we did it was, our decision-making idea was, it was based on the notion of thinking way in the future. We have to be very careful. The problem with what we're discussing tonight is it keeps us all keeping, within 8, 5, 6, 8-year increments. But this land acquisition was for a time where we will all be dead. We won't even be here. There will be people that'll be sitting here who are our grandchildren, perhaps, or even their children, who are going to be thankful for the fact that we had the foresight to ensure that that park and the integrity of that park remain whole. Because it's the one thing we have in this town that's the focal point of our town. We don't have really a town center. We have 2 shopping centers that come and go based on the whims of the owners. Our only town center is that park. And we thought about all that with the idea that maybe not in our lifetime, maybe sooner, it's still a possibility that we could take this property as an example and sell it and use that money to either pay that down or whatever, but making that the civic center. I understand. And then somebody brought up this thing about the swimming pool and the rec center. We have to be sure not to muddy the water there. The rec center is not part of this discussion at all. We made a decision and we spent some money on it and we brought it up to speed and it's ready to go. This is not part of that scheme. This is purely land banking. This is an investment for children that are not even born yet. And by the time that this, according to ABAG, our population soars to double what it is, there is still going to be a gigantic piece of green patch in our little community which nobody can mess with. And that piece of property, because it's integral, it's contiguous to that land. And the possibility that with the increase of population of people, that school will encroach into our current border in that park. We wanted to maintain that integrity, and that's it. This is a philosophical purchase. This has nothing to do with interest payments, how much it costs, what it's costing. It doesn't have anything to do with it, because let me guarantee you one thing. I know this about government. I'm in government. If you give us $1,000 to spend, we will spend $1,100. If you take away this burden from this town in the form of these payments, we will find something to squander it on that we will forget about. And it'll just be a historical little blip that will have no effect. If we maintain our hold on this, it'll be ours for the next 100 years. That's important. That's it.
Thank you, Michael. Carla?
Thank you, Michael, for being so eloquent.
I tried. I went to eloquent school.
Well, you did well. You should have gotten an A+. I agree with Michael on this. I think if we look at our own mortgages and look at how much we pay every month and how little goes to principal when we start out, and when we look at the final amount after 30 years that we've paid, it doesn't come close to what the selling price was of our home. I think that if we give up this property, we're never going to get another chance at it again. We depend on it for community use. There's nowhere else that we're going to be able to amass that type of property with the use that it satisfies. And I am certainly in agreement that we paid too much for it. There's no argument there, but as all the sayings go, what hindsight is 20/20 or whatever. We didn't know, but still, the value to the town and its uses still remain, and to be able to just be guaranteed, yes, it's not a lot. We get, about $90,000? Isn't that it, about $90,000 we get if we refinance? It's certainly better than zero. And I think that certainly we're not going to put a for sale sign on it next week, and I just think that it seems like the logical thing to do to refinance it. And in relatively short order, we're going to get the $90,000, and it just seems worth it. But I really feel very protective of that property, because I'll tell you, regardless of what you talk about with zoning, the way the state and federal government is going right now, you're not going to even get a chance to have a say in zoning. And it's already happened in the state in the last month, and it's just going to get higher and higher up the ladder. And so I know it is not something glorious that we can be proud of when we look at our budget, but people don't look at it for what it is. It's an asset. The property is an asset. I mean, we're paying out, but just like we pay for our home is our asset. And I just think it's a logical thing to do to refinance. And I think that while we're still around,
Maybe give them the gravel lot. Will they take the gravel lot as partial payment? You want the gravel lot? See, we
But-
can sell that in a second.
I think that there are a lot of opportunities out there for community use that people will embrace, and I think that we just need to be patient. Right now, we're talking about what happened during the economic downturn. Now things are looking better, and I hope that they will continue to do so. But I feel that it is of true value to the town to keep it.
Thank you, Carla. Anything else? Oh, no.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm done.
Jim?
When I look at this, the original purchase and how it was handled, I'm just flabbergasted. Where I work in the day, we have an office in back east. Somebody bought the building. We got letters from the purchaser in advance saying, this is the lease terms that were disclosed to us. Do you agree that they match what you understand your lease to be? And then when I hear that when they actually purchased this property, they didn't have a copy of the lease terms, it's just astounding. But be that as it may, we overpaid for it, we still owe the money. The way to minimize the cost of owing the money, I guess, is, yes, we'll have to refinance. And I say that sort of gritting my teeth. But I also think we need to have a discussion of, do we need to dispose of the property? And when I say dispose, there's two ways to do it. One is outright sale. The second is a long-term land lease. And that way, in 50, 100 years, the land would revert to the town. I know the University of California in San Diego has put up a hotel and housing near their campus, and those leases are going away, I think, in 2050. So, so that's something we should think about. But I do think we need to have a discussion about what's going on with the property. But also, we have a landlord hat. We've signed leases with various people, and they come due sometime over the next four years, some of them 7 years, and then the gas station forever. That's something we need to bear in mind when we're making the decision. But the disposal decision is something we can do at our leisure. We'll also need to think through what sort of restrictions to put on the land, because I believe we just sold it outright. The best economic use would be some sort of housing, and I could easily see a developer, as part of the purchase agreement, asking for wind cup zoning right next to town park. And once we start mentally spending $11–12 million of notional sale proceeds, I could see where our momentum would build to just give him anything he wants as long as we get the money. And so that's why I would like to separate discussion of the disposal of Park Madera from this underwriting. And since we can prepay, I believe we should be able to do it without serious economic consequences.
So you're in favor of the refi, but then have agendizing a separate discussion about disposal of the property?
Right, and that discussion's gonna take a while.
Okay.
Can I make one comment on that? Just, I think I made it at another meeting, but just so that everybody is aware that it has been passed in the state of California that if you build affordable housing units, it is requiring no parking, zero. Zero garages, zero parking spaces, zero. And that has been signed by Governor Brown. It's done. So when you talk about housing, and it certainly isn't helping the people that want affordable housing, let me tell you that. But that is the thing. And so all these different uses that could come before us have some high prices to pay.
Which is why we lease the land, because as the landowner, we can control it.
So you're saying a leasehold sale? Where
Yes.
it would be in 100 years, yeah. That's interesting.
Like in England, London.
Okay. Can I make my comments now? Okay, so our immediate issue is whether or not to refinance, and I think that we have kind of a concurrence on the council to do that. So, and that's where I think we should do and go along with the recommended proposal. We'll ask for a motion for that in a minute, but since we've gone a little further afield, I'd like to touch on a couple little things. Diane, consistently you make smart comments about options available to us. The only thing is that the options that you presented to us tonight are, by their nature, somewhat speculative. The thing that we know we get by refinancing immediately rather than putting off the decision is we'll save approximately $90,000 a year. And that's something to consider. So although I respect those scenarios, I'm not sure about how they would play out. I know for sure if we refinance, we save money annually. It's still a loss, though, obviously, but at least we're mitigating our damages. Michael, I'm very sympathetic to the long-term benefit argument. I believe that my own role, our role as town council members, is to set it up for those who come after us. And those mean in particular our children and their children and so forth. And if there's an opportunity to set this up in a way so that they have an opportunity to do something with that property that benefits the town by expanding the park or putting a public building, there's a very hard to quantify but very tangible benefit to that. Even though we or nobody that we know may realize that, it's a benefit that at some point we can give this back to the town. If we can do it without sacrificing the town's finances in the interim. And that's, I mean, sometimes I'm wondering how close we are to that, but I'd like to think it can be done. I agree, Carla, we're not about to resell the property. In other words, that might happen. Jim has, I think, got a good idea. We should consider it seriously, but since we're not about to do it in the short term, there's no downside to me to saving that money immediately. And I'm in favor of trying to go forward, walk down the path we know what's going to happen, while leaving ourselves the option. I appreciate our consultants able to bring in a deal which no longer had a hard fix on it anymore. Jim, I agree with kind of where you ended up. I disagree that we should revisit how we got here. I think that there is a tendency sometimes, it can be gratuitous and sort of it can be fun to point fingers and point out why things that happened were bad before us and how other people have done things badly. I don't think it's helpful for each other and for the town to dwell on that. Instead, we kind of are where we are, so let's just kind of see what we can do to make life better. I do agree very much with where you went with that, which is that we ought to seriously consider. Is a long-term lease something that's possible, or a sale? We ought to genuinely consider those options, and be mindful of the fact, since our current leases are coming due in roughly 4 years plus, although the gas station is its own problem, that might be an opportune time to do something. And we ought to seriously consider restrictions on land, and our people in the planning department and our town manager probably have smart comments about how we ought to consider land use. So where I come down is that I believe we ought to make a motion to go forward with the refi as proposed.
May I make a couple of comments?
Sure.
First, I actually have a question. I'm not sure if it's for you gentlemen or for our attorney. If the town were to enter into a long-term lease, could the town enter into a long-term lease with this notice of participation and leases in place? Is there any?
No, council member. These assets that will be pledged for the security of the bondholders, so you would not be able to further encumber them, with a lease on them.
But we could lease out the individual properties to the tenants for a particular period of time.
As is currently already done.
Yeah.
For example, yes, exactly. That'll be disclosed to bondholders. They'll know about those leases.
Okay. Thank you. So that would worry me, that we would not have the option of entering into a long-term lease.
What he mentioned, what he's talking about, leasehold sale. We would sell the property after, when we decide to sell it, we sell it at leasehold, and then it comes back to us in 50 years. In other words, you're selling buildings and use, but not real estate. The real estate is leasehold.
But we would not be able to do that if we refinance.
No, of course not. No.
Right.
Yeah, right. No, this would be in the future when we decide we want to sell it. and
Okay.
A few years from now. That's an item for future discussion, which I agree.
Okay,
yes.
so I want you guys to understand that. If we refinance, we would not be able to enter
Right,
into
yeah.
a long-term lease unless we refinanced it again.
Yes.
Okay, I also want to mention, let's say we're assuming $377,000 in costs. If we're saving $90,000 a year, that's a 4.18 year break even. So it's going to be over 4 years before we break even on those costs.
But in
just
the
so you know.
absence of that, we're automatically losing that money every minute. So it's true that we're only saving, and it would take us 3 or 4 years to kind of break even at that ratio, everything else being equal. But in the absence of that, we're already going further downhill.
Look, I get that. But my point is, are we looking at this as something we're maybe going to try to solve in 2 years and we want to have flexibility? Or are we willing to really kind of accept a certain amount of commitment here to stick this out for a little bit in order to, make this worthwhile? Look, I'm not.
In my view, that kind of judgment, although it may not be perfect and we may ultimately be wrong, is the kind of thing we're supposed to be exercising. I'm prepared to make that commitment.
Okay. I think I am too, but I don't want to lose out on the conversation about what our plan is for the site.
Absolutely.
We really must.
I agree.
We haven't had that discussion, and I think we really need to.
Jim?
Because we're losing a ton of money on this.
Ask you guys
Jim,
again.
we got to reopen it in the whole bit.
I know.
Okay, so Jim would like a motion to reopen public comment.
Okay, I wanna.
Wait, we don't have it
Hold
yet,
on. Wait a second. Is that what you're saying?
because he wants to ask questions to our consultants.
I want to find out if we scrape the land and then lease the land, what happens?
The bond guys will come here and shoot you.
Jim, if you want to have that, it's okay,
I
but
can
but
answer
you
that
have
for
you have to
you.
persuade one of your brothers or sisters on the council to reopen it so you can ask it. It's
Oh,
fine.
okay, I'll move to
Okay,
reopen.
Carla's moving. Is somebody seconding?
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yes.
Okay, boom. Go ahead, Jim.
No, as I understood our conversation earlier, if we sat there and said, hey, we're gonna lease this land for 99 years, give us a lump sum payment to do it, and you can scrape it and put up whatever we zone to go in there.
Right. So I think there's two questions in this conversation that I would like to address. The first one is, as James said, there are any investor who is buying the bonds now. understands that this is a private use retail center that has tenants. They're not doing a credit review on those tenants. They take the risk those tenants may or may not make payments. They understand that the town's really the obligor. If there are new tenants that come into that space, under whatever terms that the town negotiates, that's completely at your control. Again, the investors cannot and will not impact who you decide to be the tenants on the property. Okay, set that aside. The second question is if there is going to be a reuse of the property. In other words, you are going to negotiate with a developer to come in and do a ground lease, let's say for 50 years. That is going to be a material event, right? Because to James' point, they're going to want a security interest in that lease so that they can do all the improvements, get their construction financing and all that other stuff. We would expect, looking at this comprehensively, that you're going to develop a plan, a financing plan around this property, and you're going to evaluate, are they going to give you a lump sum up front as part of this 50-year lease? In which case, if they do, we're going to use those proceeds to pay down all or a portion of the obligation, therefore removing the lien from that property. We're writing that into the documents to preserve that right in the future, that there can be a partial redemption of the debt, all or a portion of, from proceeds of a sale or a lease interest or whatever it is. So you will maintain that flexibility. If you were to enter into an agreement whereby a developer was just going to pay you, let's say, $2 million a year, but nothing up front, developers like to do that, right? No money down. That could be a problem, right? That we would have to really look at that because you will have to find the money. We'd have to look at a way to substitute another piece of property in so that we could remove Park Madera from the leasehold interest for the financing. So not to complicate this conversation, but you will have flexibility, and I would just suggest as your advisor that if you get there and we're having this conversation, we want to be looking at it holistically. It's not just about the debt, it's about really what the business plan is with a third-party developer who might come in and does it make sense to do a 50-year leasehold interest or a 100-year or a 10-year, whatever it is. Did that answer the question? No.
Yes. But the answer is different from what I understood from earlier today.
Well, I think, again, if you get into a negotiation where there is going to be upfront proceeds to enter into the agreement, that money will be used to pay off or a portion of the debt. Absolutely. And the investors understand that and would expect that. And then what we're doing is we're removing the COP lien against Park Madera. So you do effectively own it free and clear, right? You still may have a residual obligation on the fire stations and town hall, but at least we would remove the lien obligation on Park Madera Center.
But we'd have to raise enough cash at that time to close the transaction.
No, not all of it. So we have value in these other assets, right? So call it $3 million. I'm making up a number off the top of my head. And if that negotiation with a property or a third party to do something with Park Madera, and they only offered to pay you $7, right? You wouldn't have enough to redeem the entire financing. We would apply what we have, and we would have a residual loan that's still outstanding, but it would be secured by a lien on these other 3 properties or these other 3 buildings.
So, bottom line, with our existing loan, or this refinance loan, if we didn't basically sell Park Madera for the appraised value, we're going to be like the homeowner who's upside down in his mortgage and wants to pay it off, but he can't close the transaction because he doesn't have the additional cash handy
No,
for the unfunded principal.
I don't think that's an accurate statement because we're, right now, the aggregate value, appraised value of the assets that we're talking about, 2 fire stations, town hall, and Park Madera, add up to approximately 13 or $14 million.
It's more like 15, I think.
Okay, $15 million, of which we're going to have an obligation at 10.5 or something like that. So maybe it's better for me to explain it this way. If you were to choose to have a third party come in and develop something on the site, and they only wanted to offer you $2 million, that would be a problem, right? We wouldn't be able to move forward with that because they're going to want it unencumbered, and the town doesn't have the resources to pay down the debt with only $2 million of lease proceeds that they would get from that third party. So that would be an impediment. But if it was a number, north of 7.5 or 8, actually it could work out perfectly.
But that would restrict what we could do in terms of controlling the property.
Potentially. Yeah, I mean, that's an economic development conversation at some point later on.
That brings up another question. Since we're open, may I?
Of course.
If the town were to rezone the property during the life of these certificates of participation, is that okay? If we restrict the types of use, as long as we are not affecting the existing operations? That might be.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, because one, we're not underwriting, or the rating agencies are not looking at this as a revenue security, or a revenue property, excuse me. So they're not evaluating the use of Park Madera Center for purposes of a revenue stream. So if you were to, let's just say, convert it to community space like you were talking about, right, where you take half of the site and you're just going to open it up and not have a tenant, that would have no negative impact on the credit or the investors or the requirement to do anything different. It may have a financial hardship on the town because now you don't have that the rent that's coming off of that particular portion of the center, but it would not affect the backside or the financing side.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify that, or add to that, the documents contemplate that if the town were to condemn the site, that would be a prepayment, mandatory prepayment. Basically, zone it to an effect where nothing could be built there. Condemn it essentially under state law purposes, for state law purposes. That would require a prepayment to the bondholders. But otherwise, rezoning is not contemplated by the documents.
All right, well, if, let's say we were to rezone for moderate mixed use, and it would be difficult to quantify the value of the property at that point, would that require a huge analysis to?
Yeah, I think that would be fine
Okay.
on the legal documents.
Yeah, the guarantee on the loan is the town general fund.
Okay, any other questions? Would any member of the public like to provide comment? Please, Patty.
That's the same thing I just told David.
I just wanted to take one step further about that.
Patty, could you state your name for the record?
My name is Patty Stolier, Casa Buena Drive. The idea about the intergenerational center or any kind of a community center, something that we had talked with Marin Space about was having outposts of places like Whistle Stop and places like the Jewish Family Service who pay rent for a position to be in Corte Madera and provide services. So if there were a place that we could provide, they, in addition to whatever charges you have for the ceramics class, there could be those tenants. That's all.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. And, we have did that change your opinion, Jim, or do you feel like we're ready to make a motion of some kind here? Diane, you want to say something, or?
Well, I think our hands are going to be tied a little bit no matter what we do, whether we hold on to our existing financial arrangement or if we refinance. we've got a large balance outstanding that we need to pay down. We have creditors, so we're not gonna be able to all of a sudden rezone the whole parcel to parkland as much as we might want to. But not only that, we wouldn't be able to afford to do that because of the loss of revenue for rents. And by the way, I should mention that my analysis was just strictly about financing. I did not take into consideration rental revenues. So that certainly offsets these costs. I want to make that clear to everybody. I don't think we're going to have an answer in the next 4 years. So I think it's probably worthwhile to refinance. I'm glad we got the 8-year call out of there. I'm comfortable with being on the hook for paying the differential between the current interest rate and a future interest rate. I think we all recognize the likelihood of interest rates dropping drastically are extremely slim. So I can probably go along with this, but I really think the town needs to kind of figure out what we want to do with this site, and I think it's time that we consider what we might do to ease the financial burden on the town of this site. I don't want to just sit and hold it because we want it 100 years from now. We have a lot of things in town that we need to pay for, flood control, levies. We've got a lot of stuff that we would like to spend our money on, other than interest. So I would like to, for this council to, in the near future, figure out how we're going to start that conversation.
Okay. I think you have to make 2, right? David? Is it 2? One of them is a resolution 15/2016. But then is there also a supplemental, or is that part of the same resolution?
No,
There's one
it'd
and
be
two.
2 different actions. One would be to adopt the resolution, the other would be to approve the supplemental appropriation, which is actually an open number because it would be at 100% of what the refinancing costs are.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
I'll just move with item number 1, adopt the resolution 15/2016, authorize the delivery of the refunding.
Do I hear a
I'll
second?
second that.
Okay.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember Condon?
Yes.
Councilmember Lappert? Vice Mayor First?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes. Do we have a second motion?
I'll keep the motion going, then we'll approve the supplemental appropriation.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember Condon?
Yes.
Councilmember Lappert? Vice Mayor First?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes. All right. We're on now to
Now you can tell us all about it.
town item 7, number 2, Roman numeral 2, little I. Consideration of possible action regarding the Marin County Civil Grand Jury Report entitled 2015-2016 Web Transparency for the town of Corte Madera. Rebecca?
Thank you, Mayor Bailey and council members. Now I can express gratitude to the grand jury for awarding us the A+ on our hard-earned effort. Given that we already discussed the report in the sanitary district discussion, what I didn't bring up previously was that recommendation number 2 states that the agency should file and keep updated its statement of facts with the California Secretary of State and the Marin County Clerk as required by California Code 53051. What the other towns in Marin are saying is that this code doesn't apply to the state and to towns. It applies to special districts and JPAs. But given that we are a sanitary district and a town and responding to 2 separate reports as such, it put me in an awkward spot of saying, yes, we'll file this for this, but not file it for that when it's the same people. And I am recommending saying we will go ahead and just file the statement of facts. If you would like to say otherwise, we can do that. And that's the only concern that I have in this report. Otherwise, we are not required to respond to any other recommendations because we exceeded the expectations of the grand jury in all other aspects.
Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions of Rebecca before I open it to the public? Would any member of the public like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council.
I'd just like to keep this real simple. She ran this, she did everything about it.
Yeah.
I think it's an insult for us to even comment on this item. She can do whatever she wants with this response, and I don't want to weigh in anywhere.
I believe our county gave her an A+.
Okay, so let's not even discuss that. Let's just say, go ahead and do whatever you want.
So would you like to make a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Condon.
Aye.
Councilmember Lappert. Vice Mayor First.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes.
Okay.
And
All
you
right.
did do a great job on the website.
Yeah.
So are there any comments about 7, Roman numeral 2, little I, the draft agenda for June 21st, 2016?
Looks good to me. I like what Dave did with that little report that you slotted in with, so I think that we got a really good handle on
Yeah.
the future agenda.
David, I wouldn't mind, frankly, having those dates in the thing somewhere. You don't have to put them in, I would like either an email or something, just because I get questions on a regular basis about
They-
each of those.
They will actually be on my future drafts agenda lists, which is on the website.
Do you include on the website not just the next one, but like 3 or 4 from now? Great. Okay, good enough. Good enough. I don't need anything that's on there. Okay. There's no action to be taken on that, unless anybody else has something they want to say about the agenda. All right, I'm going to move on to, does anybody want to have a comment about the minutes from May 17th, 2016? Okay, do I have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Councilmember Andrews.
Yes.
Councilmember Condon. Councilmember Lappert.
Yes.
Vice Mayor First.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes. All right, I'll move, all right, I will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.